Hello everyone! In today's video I'm going to show you the work I did in 11th grade for my art class. I've already made a video about my 10th grade work if you're interested. In 10th grade I got the final grade of a 19 out of 20 and in 11th grade it was a 16 out of 20. So this year was worse, with much less focus on creativity, but my 10th grade teacher had already warned us about that. Before high school, we also have art classes, but the teachers don't seem to care. They must think no one is going to have a job related to art, so it's not even worth teaching. Because of this, they always teach the same things every year without helping the students draw well or understand the concepts. The teachers just sat in their chairs on their phones. But in high school, when you choose the art course, you expect to learn new things and improve the skills you have already acquired on your own. In my 10th grade, the teacher helped a lot with techniques and giving constructive criticism. So I thought, wow, high school is amazing. But that quickly changed when my 11th grade classes became even worse and more boring than the classes in middle school. And now I'm going to show the work and talk about the classes. For the first project, we had to do an observational drawing of a photograph by an artist whose name I don't know, so I can't find it. The proportions had to be exactly the same as the photographs. The most important part was to show that it was a 3D object by using graphite to mark the light and shadow. We also had to draw the texture of the materials. Drawing wood texture was a nightmare. I'm just noticing now that the floor is crooked, but the other drawing is much worse. This drawing is really ugly. For this one, I did the same thing as the previous one, except I use Chinese ink and a bit of pen for the small details. Using Chinese ink for painting is very difficult. Even when I added more water, it was still completely black. I'd say this is a more abstract work because we had to use dots and it had to be in an original way. We weren't allowed to get inspiration from other works. This project was also done on 2 sheets of paper, each of them divided into 6 squares. Each one had a theme that we had to follow. The first square's theme was size. I don't think there's a lot you can do with that. The second theme was dispersion and concentration. She didn't like it and said it looked like more gradient. If she had given me that feedback while I was working on the project, I would have done something different. The third one was ordering. I think we had to create a pattern. The fourth square was a gradient. The fifth one was regular and irregular contour, and she liked this one. And this one was direction. This is the second part of the project. The first square is balance or stability. The second one was rhythm or movement. I didn't know what to do for this one. Someone had already done art bits, and I couldn't think of anything else. This one was interval, which meant we had to do something with the dots, while also leaving a part without any. The fourth square was joy. The fifth was indecision. And I didn't know what to do, so I left it for the end. But then I ran out of time and had to rush it. And this last one was explosion. I didn't like the result of the project, and the teacher didn't like it either. While we were working on the project, we would show our ideas to the teacher. She would say, "Don't do this on the project, because the drawing for direction team also seems to be from the size team." But then, at the end of the project, when we had finished everything, she said, "Sometimes drawings can look like they fit two teams, and there's no problem at all. That's just how it is." I don't know if this started with this project or later on, but the whole class would ask the teacher for her opinion on our work, and she would say, "If you like it," and then give a horrible grade. But she could have at least helped us better understand what she was expecting us to do, because this project seems so subjective. Everyone interprets the themes differently, but she was the one who was going to grade them. For this project, we had to choose between these three photos. I chose what I thought was the easiest one. The goal was to draw the photograph and paint it using only a black pen, making the drawing look like it had volume and the same proportions as the photo. To do this, we had to guide ourselves by the negative spaces. For example, instead of drawing the plant, we would draw the background. I don't know if I explained that well. Here's what I made. It's not perfect, but I'm pretty happy with it. I actually got some praise for how I use the pen just like a pencil. I was glad to hear it. But I feel like a lot of other people's work was better than mine, and they deserve more that compliment. This is the complete work. In this second part, we had to use gouache to paint the plant, but with different color combinations for each square. For this project, a classmate of mine went to ask the teacher for her opinion on her work. The teacher thought it was bad, so she took an eraser and erased the work without my classmate's permission. Can you imagine putting in so much effort for it to just disappear? I would be furious. I think it was also during this project that the classmate went to the teacher for her opinion and said, "I know my work is a bit rustic." And the teacher looked at it and said, "Normally, when someone says something is rustic, it's just an excuse for it being ugly." The entire class stopped and was in shock. I don't know why, but from then on, she kept saying that as if it were a joke every time someone showed a project. It was rustic, she'd say, but nobody except her thought it was funny. For this project, we had to create 2 initial sketches and change at least 2 of the following: situation, scale, position, or color. Here's what I did. I love the second one because it turned out very creative. I added a picture of Ladybug to the newspaper and put a glass on top of it because people put glasses over insects when they see them. And this is the final drawing. I combined elements from the 2 sketches and used a blue and a red pencil to color it. I know the perspective is terrible, but I think it still looks nice. This project was horrible. Not the project itself, but the classes. What a nightmare. This is what we were supposed to do. Construct a collage aiming to approximate the artist's style. He uses movie tickets, fabric, and yellowish paper. We didn't have any of that, so we had to use what we had. But apparently, my teacher wanted copies of the artist's work. I used different colors, but I used the same technique. I even included a little message for her in my work. I did this whole project on my own at home because I was sick of those classes. The first couple of classes were all about planning. I showed the teacher my idea and asked for her thoughts. And all she told me was to cut larger pieces of paper. So that's what I did. Our drawing class is split. Half of us come in the morning and the other half in the afternoon. The next week, I found out she had been speaking badly about my work to the other half of the class. She said I already glued the paper and I wasn't supposed to, and it looked bad. But it was all a lie. Since she thought I already glued the project, I just glued it at home, the way I wanted and stress-free. It turned out incredible. The first thing she said when she saw the work was that red doesn't stand out on black. Some of my classmates were still gluing their work, so I was walking around the room looking at what they were doing. A classmate of mine wanted to glue a piece of newspaper on a corner of her paper, but the teacher wouldn't let her, saying the original artist doesn't put paper in the corners. So I did a search and found the opposite. I showed my classmate, and we both told the teacher that some of his works did have it. The teacher then said out loud, "Raquel only finds fake things." I found more examples, and she said, "The artist made a mistake." Another classmate was still trying to figure things out. She had everything laid out, but not glued, and went to show it to the teacher. The first thing the teacher did was completely dismantle the whole thing without asking her first. Another friend of mine showed the teacher her project, which she had already glued down. The teacher just ripped it all apart without her permission. In our final class, we all showed our project. Honestly, most of them looked pretty similar to each other and didn't really capture the original artist's vibe. Each piece had its own thing going on, but none of them had the artist's chaotic and creative feel. I know he has some organized stuff too, but it looks like everyone was inspired by just one specific piece, instead of his whole collection. Still, they were very beautiful and very well done. This was another observation drawing, but we were looking at the 3D object this time. We weren't allowed to use a ruler, which is actually a rule for all our projects this year. For the first part, we had to draw the object without volume, just the basic shape, to learn its structure. For the second part, we had to draw the solid using light, shadow, and texture. The classes got so tedious because we never got to draw what we wanted that by this point everyone just lost their motivation to draw, even outside the class. I get that we need to learn this stuff for the fundamentals and because it might be on the exam, but it's still draining, and what's worse, we don't get any real feedback to actually improve. The first drawing for this project was done with charcoal sticks. We had 2 plaster heads, I think, and 3 bottles. Everyone shows an angle and a head. Charcoal is very difficult to draw with. The sticks are so small and thin that we can't have much precision. My drawing looks nothing like the head, not even close. But my teacher liked it, I don't know how. The last step was to spray hairspray on top to set it. After I used hairspray, I went to put my paper on the classroom counter with some of my classmates' work. A classmate came to put hers down too, but didn't use the spray, so I asked her if she was going to. She said, "No, the teacher said it wasn't worth using the spray because my work was ugly." I was in shock. For the second part, we had to draw a watering can, a little table, I think that's what it is, 2 bottles, and a small wooden box. When I looked at the real objects, I saw so many mistakes in my drawing, but it honestly didn't look that bad. This picture was taken before I added the background because I was scared of messing up the drawing, and this is the final result. For this project, we use colored pencils and oil pastels on black cardstock, and I have a few reasons for why it looks a little crooked. First, if I remember correctly, we had a 3-hour class, and one of those hours was for setting up, so we had to do this drawing very quickly, and because of that, I paid more attention to the overall look than to the actual details. Second, the teacher said we could put the paper in any position we wanted. I didn't think the objects would take up so much space that I'd need to draw on the paper horizontally, but they did. So I had to try to find a way to make everything fit on the cardstock, but I couldn't. And I also couldn't erase the things I did wrong. The colors look a little strange, don't they? To draw on black cardstock, you need light colored pencils. And I didn't have any in my pencil case, so I had to get some from the school supply, but the whole class had already taken the white pencils. This left me with only a grey pencil to create the highlights. Since the watering can is also a shade of grey, the grey highlights ended up making the entire object appear black. But then, with the oil pastel part, I felt so much more free. It's such a fun material to use, and it stands out so well on black cardstock. So I went to paint with my 12 oil pastels. I had 2 shades of brown for the wood and for its shadow, and I used a yellow for the brightest parts. But a part of the drawing was even darker than the darkest brown, so I thought, I will use blue. That will look so artistic. The teacher saw it and said, the shadow is not blue, so I had to paint over it with another color, and I liked it. I understand why she said that. The project is supposed to be realistic. I think what made me saddest was having the opportunity to add something different, more colorful and less realistic, but not being allowed to. For this project, we had to choose from a few poems selected by the school, and I chose this one. For this assignment, we had more freedom on what to draw, but it still had to be a kind of representation of the poem. This work is a calligram, which, from what I understand, is a drawing created with words. We were supposed to use a nib with Chinese ink, which I didn't use. I used a fine point pen instead. There's not much to say about this work, but I chose this poem because it seemed to describe one of my characters that I had drawn a short time before this project. I know it's not the same, but it's not bad. This was the last project of the year. I also have homework drawings from not just this year, but last year as well. So maybe I will make a video next year with all the homework from my 3 years of art class. Thank you for watching the video until the end. I hope you liked it. Bye!